Alright, what's going on, guys? Welcome to Behind the Grind. So, I recently ran a poll on the YouTube channel, and I asked you guys, what do you want next for Warhammer 40k Space Marine? So, you guys voted, and the answers are that 43% of you voted for a Deathwatch prequel surrounding around Titus, 46% of you voted for a new story with new chapters and characters, and only 11% of you voted for a Space Marine 4, Space Marine 5, etc., etc. So, with the poll results in, I kind of wanted to talk to you guys about what is next for the Warhammer 40k Space Marine series. This is a video I've been thinking about making for a while now. Since the announcement of Space Marine 3, I figured, okay, now that we know what's coming after Space Marine 2, I kind of want to know what their plans are moving forward after Space Marine 3. So, I got a couple ideas in mind, and I figured, well, why not just turn on the mic and talk to you guys about it. Before we begin, I want to ask you to please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Also, let's take a moment to thank our channel members for supporting the Behind the Grind YouTube channel. Your help means a lot, and if you're interested in being a channel member, check out the information in the description down below. Thank you. With all that out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about some of these ideas that I have as to how to move Space Marine forward. Okay, so getting the biggest idea out of the way, me personally, I think the best way to move this series forward is to kind of tell us the story of Lieutenant Titus while he was serving in the Deathwatch. So, if you guys didn't already know, at the end of Space Marine 1, Lieutenant Titus was taken, well, not Lieutenant at the time, actually, Captain Titus of the Ultramarine 2nd Company was taken by the Inquisition under accusations of heresy by everyone's favorite homeboy Leandros, and well, going to the data vault and the research center in Space Marine 2, you kind of get a little bit of that backstory leading up to the events of Space Marine 2. So going to the research center and pulling up the entry for Lieutenant Titus, it reads that he was taken under the custody of the Inquisition by Inquisitor Thrax. Now, driven by his personal suspicion of the Adeptus Astartes, Inquisitor Thrax physically and psychically tortured Titus, allowing no word of his captive to reach the Ultramarines. So personally, just by reading that, it kind of tells me that obviously Titus did not have a good time under the custody of the Inquisition. Now, I really do want to know what kind of happened in between the events of Space Marine and Space Marine 2, and just going off of that, it really sounds pretty interesting. Obviously, we know that after he was released by the Inquisition that he served in the Deathwatch. And he was so ashamed of serving in the Deathwatch that he even stripped his heraldry and took on the name Nullus, as he was a Black Shield within the Deathwatch. Now, a Black Shield within the Deathwatch is a Space Marine that just removes any and all history from himself. He completely integrates himself within the Deathwatch ranks, and he doesn't sport his heraldry. He's not proud to show his chapter, and, well, Titus felt that he brought shame to his chapter because he was suspected of heresy. Now, when it comes to the enemy roster that we would be fighting against in this Deathwatch prequel, I'm not sure. I got a couple of ideas, but first and foremost, I want to know what you guys have to say. What kind of enemies should we fight in this Deathwatch prequel? Go ahead and let me know in the comments down below. So me personally, since we already fought the Orcs and we already fought the Tyranids, there's really no reason to not have them in this game. Sure, the assets already exist, and, well, going into Space Marine 2, Titus already had some experience fighting the Tyranids and the Orcs as well, Space Marine 1. So, we should have the Orcs and the Tyranids already to begin with. Maybe we can add on something else, like the Necrons for sure in the Deathwatch prequel. However, obviously you have to have one faction of Chaos, and if we were to go with a faction of Chaos, the Emperor's Children, honestly, in my opinion, would probably be the best way forward. We haven't seen much of the Emperor's Children within any official Warhammer 40k video games. I mean, we have in Darktide, we have the Forces of Nurgle. Obviously, in Space Marine 2, we have the Thousand Suns. In Space Marine 1, we kind of have a little bit of a mix between Chaos Undivided and the Forces of Khorne with the Bloodletters and the Chosen of Nemeroth. So, I do really think that this would be the best time for the Emperor's Children to shine. If not in this game, they're probably going to show up in Space Marine 3. So, yeah, a Deathwatch prequel telling us the story of Titus within his time in the Deathwatch. I mean, with Kill Team Primus, there's really a lot of story to kind of be told here. Obviously, his brothers that he served along with, like Darius, Kelstros, Baron, and Ulfar, like you could really tell a pretty cool story with them, and you can kind of take that co-op that worked in Space Marine 2 and you can really drive that in with the Death Watch prequel. Now, another question that I am asking myself, since there are 5 members within that Death Watch kill team, should this game be a 5-player co-op? I'm not sure. That's a good question. Maybe it's a co-op game where it's just you and one other person and you can kind of pick your characters moving forward. Somebody has to play as Titus, but the other co-op player can pick any one of the other 4 Space Marines within that Death Watch kill team, kind of in a way similar to Halo 3. So like Halo 3, you had the Master Chief and the Arbiter, but the other 2 players, you could run a 4-player co-op, would be other 2 elites within that story mode. So yeah, could a 5-player co-op campaign work? Yes and no. The only way I could see this working is if they made the campaign 110% the focus. It would be a huge campaign requiring 5 players to be playing it at once. It would be online gameplay and stuff. So I'm not sure. Let me know what you guys think about a 5-player co-op Death Watch prequel. If not able to do the 5-player co-op, we could just settle for the 3-player co-op like we had in Space Marine 3, but like I said, I really do think that there's a lot of story to be told in between Space Marine 1 and Space Marine 2, so let me know what you guys think of the Death Watch prequel. But moving on from that idea, we have a new story with new characters and a new chapter and all that kind of good stuff. So Warhammer 40k Space Marine doesn't have to be a series that is only tied to Lieutenant Titus. We can kind of branch out and tell some other stories and go and dive into some other chapters within different periods of the Imperium of Man. And for this specific game, me personally, my favorite idea would have to be able to play as an Imperial Fists Space Marine during the Siege of Terra under the command of Rogol Dorn, set during the Horus Heresy. This would be a pretty cool and badass campaign, given that, well, one, you're defending Terra against all of Chaos, but when it comes to all of Chaos, you can just have so many different enemy factions that attack you all at the same time. And, you know, you can kind of have some pretty cool defense weapons and maybe some like secretive tactic attacks and stuff like that to kind of thwart out the Chaos attack. And, you know, you get to see a Primarch in the game. We would obviously be under the direct command of Rogol Dorn of the Imperial Fists. So, you know, there's a lot of story to be told within Warhammer 40k Space Marine, like I already said. Doesn't have to be tied to Titus. You can also have a story that tells, I don't know, some kind of expedition led by the Dark Angels, or we could play as the Space Wolves when they go and attack Prospero to bring Magnus the Red to justice. There's a lot you could really do, but then again, what do? Do you go back to the past, or do you try to move the Warhammer 40k story forward? That's another good question for you, is that what is the best course of action here? Should we get some more prequel games, or should we just kind of focus on moving the story forward? Let me know what you think. And to end this all off, we have Space Marine 4, 5, and etc. for the final choice in the poll. Now, with this specific entry, what I really wanted to kind of nail in, and I hope that you guys understood when you were voting, is that this would just continue the story of Titus as is. And this is the least interesting for me, because after Space Marine 3, I just want to see this story be told by somebody else. I do really like Titus. Titus is pretty badass. He's a great main character. However, in telling a great story, you got to have a lot of great characters. And after Space Marine 3, and we fight with Gadriel and Chiron, shit, maybe I want to see Gadriel carry on the mantle of leadership. Maybe he gets promoted to lieutenant, and now we get to play as Gadriel, or we could have like his backstory as to how he became such a well-known warrior within the Ultramarine 2nd Company. But once again, this idea is kind of the least appealing to me because, look, I don't hate Ultramarines. I actually really love the Ultramarines. However, I know a lot of the fan base and the community kind of gets sick of seeing Ultramarines all the time. So if we were to go forward with telling another Space Marine story, we got to get away from the Ultramarines after Space Marine 3, whether it be a prequel telling us the story of Titus while he was serving in the Death Watch, or it's a new chapter and some new characters going forward. But yeah, I figured I would just turn on the mic and talk to you guys a little bit because, like I said, I do love Warhammer 40k Space Marine, and there's a lot of potential with this kind of game. Like, they don't have to restrict themselves in any way, shape, or form, and as fans, as long as they keep delivering, we're gonna keep buying. As long as it's not Saber that's developing these games. You guys already know what they're turning Space Marine 2 into, but that's a talk for another time. Anyways, that's pretty much all I got for the video, guys. If you enjoyed the video, please consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel for more content. Also, if you wish to support the channel further, I'd encourage you to join the channel membership for exclusive perks. Thanks. This has been Behind the Grind, talking about some interesting ideas for Warhammer 40k Space Marine, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace!